Good afternoon. This is Media Center Ukraine, Odesa. We are starting our working day, our week, and today's briefing is dedicated to migration of Ukrainians that started with the full-scale invasion and why and when Ukrainians come back home. We are having online Hanna Shevchenko, teacher of the Institute, head of the language studio, and EngmarineSt. Hopefully, I named the school properly. Then we have Hanna Antipova, psychologist, volunteer online, and we also have Svitlana Suslova, freelancer, who have returned in Ukraine. She is with us in person, and we're also waiting for Olena Pogrebnyak, head of the main department of the State Migration Service of Ukraine in the Odesa region. Let's start with Ms. Antipova. Can you tell us where are you now, why you've left Ukraine, and how is life going abroad? Yes, good afternoon. My name is Hanna Antipova. Since March last year, I've been staying in Moldova because my mother was sick and I just couldn't buy the medicine we needed in Ukraine. That's why we were forced to leave Ukraine. For 5 months, we lived in a village waiting for the end of war. And we thought that it could take another, some more 2 or 3 weeks to come back home. But then we understood that we had to spend winter in Moldova. That's why we moved from the village to the city. I found job. I'm psychologist, and I found a company supporting refugees, and I joined the mobile psychologist team that covers northern regions of Moldova. I can just share some details about our work. We help refugees from Ukraine to accommodate, to adjust. We also monitor how it's going on for them because the situations are different. Some of them are really very difficult. In 6 or 12 months, they are able to find job. Some of them decide to get another education, and they are able to buy some accommodation, some houses. Okay, our next speaker, Hanna Shevchenko. Can you share your story? Good afternoon, everyone. I am now in Romania, in the north of Romania. I've been in Romania for around 5 months already, and I'd like to say, and actually I'd like to thank Romanians for supporting Ukrainians, because Romania perhaps does not advertise itself a lot, but Romania provides the best conditions of accommodations and work in Romania. A lot of people speak English in Romania, and a lot of Romanians also speak Ukrainian. That's why it simplifies the communication with locals. Most of us are employed now. We have some connection issues now. Romania provides support to businesses to start some new businesses. Around 50% of Ukrainians staying in Romania are involved in volunteer supporting Ukrainian refugees. And we also support refugees from other countries. Let's now give floor to Svitlana. Can you share your story when you left Ukraine, when you decided to come back to Ukraine, and why? Good afternoon. I left Ukraine on the 26th of February. That was really very scary, and I also thought that it would take 2 or 3 weeks for me to come back home. But after 3 weeks, we understood that the war would take some time, and we decided to go to Georgia because we have a lot of friends and colleagues there and partners. It took us a week to travel to Georgia by car. Then we rented flats there, and everything is very expensive there. Accommodation and food. They supported me there also, like psychologically. And I also could go to gym for 3 weeks. That was the only support that I took from Georgia. Ukrainians can stay in Georgia for 2 years now without visa. So it used to be 1 year, but yesterday they adopted a new law to expand this period for 2 weeks. When you come back home, so actually I spent there around 7 months, and every day I want to come back home. And then I saw that the situation was more or less calm in Odesa, and decided to come back to Odesa just to check the situation. And I don't want to leave Odesa. I don't want to leave Ukraine. It's better here than abroad. So you've just come back, right? Yes, in Odessa, people are good, they are open, and I feel comfortable here. Thank you. Ms. Antipova, you've mentioned that you are a psychologist and that you were able to find the job just related to your background. So whom do you provide services? Ukrainians, residents of Moldova? What challenges you face there? I work with Ukrainians, with Ukrainian refugees, and our team, COSMED, before the war, was involved in supporting elderly people with rehabilitation, massages, psychological support. Elderly can be alone in Moldova because their children, their grandchildren move to Europe or to Russia. That's why elderly people in Moldova can be alone. And the company where I found work supported elderly people. And with the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Moldova responded very quickly, supporting Ukrainians from the very first day. And namely, Moldova supported Odesa and Mykolaiv regions, even when Ukrainians were in transit in Moldova. So Moldova was the first to literally hug Ukrainians. We work with very severe cases because we have people from Kherson, from the occupied territories. And these are our beneficiaries. And we have around 6 psychologists in our team. After the new year, we saw increased number of people, and sometimes we work more than 5 days a week. I have a question to Ms. Shevchenko. You're a teacher of the Institute and the language studio, so as far as I understand, you continue your activities. Can you share details about your work, how relocation has affected your activities? I can't say about some major changes, because when you come to a new place, you should just start doing something. That's why I can't say about some major changes in my life. So in Ukraine, I used to work with our children, cadets, students, and the same work I do here now. So I work with the same people, with the same children, Ukrainian children. But there is a psychological issue. And we need, teachers need to understand that our children are now staying in a different country. And for most of them, it is quite difficult to adjust to new conditions. So there is a mental aspect that we should take into consideration. And perhaps we need to change our approach to such children, to have individual approach to every child. I am involved in volunteering as well, and they are free of charge courses, trainings. And this is a part of my support of Ukrainians, the part of my volunteer activities. And this is now a part of my life. I have a question to Svitlana. A lot of people from Odesa region left for Moldova and Ukraine and Romania because these countries are close to Odesa region. But you were in Georgia. Could you speak about changes in Georgia diaspora? So there are not so many Ukrainians there. A lot of Russians are in Georgia. But why did you decide to go to Georgia? Because I had friends there and colleagues, and they just took me there, and I had no one in Moldova because I would better live in Moldova because Georgia is too far. Coming back to Moldova, can you tell us about the support of Moldovan authorities, because contrary to Romania, Moldova is not the EU member state. Ms. Antipova, can you tell us how local authorities support Ukraine in Moldova? They support us with human resources because there is no generally financial support. There is support of the UN. These are the money, 1,400 euro for one person, an adult or a child. And there is also support of donors, but they are not called as donors. This is Caritas from the Czech Republic, the Red Cross from Switzerland, and there are also volunteer organizations who look for the donors. To cover all the urgent needs like food, different types of products, items, chemical products. There was also sponsor support for people to rent housing. The people like I, for example, we could address volunteers to get support during 3 winter months in terms of paying for municipal services, because these things are quite expensive here. That's why there is a significant support in Moldova. So they give us vouchers to buy clothes, medications, but this is mainly from donors, not from the Moldova as a state. But people in Moldova are ready to help us. Thank you. Olena Pogrebnyak has joined us, head of the main department of the State Migration Service of Ukraine. Ms. Pogrebnyak, the floor is yours. So we are now discussing the experience of migrants from Ukraine, from Odesa region. Do you have any statistics? How many people have left Odesa region? How many people have returned to Odesa? As the migration service, we can say that 2022 was a record year for us. In in the number of foreign passports. More than 40% of citizens who received documents in Odesa regions were IDPs, so they were not from the city of Odesa or Odesa regions. They were from Kharkiv Oblast, Kherson Oblast, Donetsk, Mykolaiv, Luhansk, Kyiv, Chernihiv, Sumska Oblasts. So all the oblasts that saw hostilities. So our region was the accepting party. Of course, residents of Odesa region also left Ukraine, but we had a lot of Ukrainians from other regions here. Odesa region is on the border of the Ukraine. That's why for most citizens of our region, it was like a solution to go to the south of the region. So it was easier psychologically for people because they knew that they could leave at once as soon as the situation deteriorated. As for statistics, the numbers are different because there was the constant flow of people. Some of them left from Ukraine, then they came back and then decided to go back abroad again because of blackouts, because of medication issues or the lack of water. We can say that the most people who received foreign passports here were elderly and children. Why is it so? Because people aged 60 years are the most active category of citizens that can travel, that can work abroad, and these people, they usually have the documents, IDs for travel. But when it comes to children, to elderly people, they don't have these passports, these IDs, and we needed to issue them. As for general statistics, it is very difficult to speak about how many people left and how many people have already come back. And I can say that only that the number was in three times more than we used to have before 2022 when it comes to the applications to obtain foreign passports. And, for example, there were cases with families when women with children decided not to leave, their fathers here. It is very difficult now to say about the exact number because now there are families who are living now in two countries. For example, mothers with their children can stay abroad and come back here for some time. So actually, now till hostilities are ongoing, we have live migration, and the statistics have been statistics changes every day. Of course, there are people who have already left, never to come back, but this is quite soon to speak about these people because, of course, the foreign countries support Ukrainian, but there is international legislation, especially when it comes to temporary asylum provided to Ukrainians. That's why after the end of war, we cannot expect that people will be able to stay in foreign countries under the same conditions they're staying now. That's why I hope that the better conditions in Ukraine will be a signal for Ukrainians to come back here. In March last year, we had such numbers that 200,000 people left the city of Odesa and 250,000 left Odesa region. Then some of them came back home. Then because of the blackouts, people went abroad again. That's why I'm asking about the numbers. Of course, we understand that the migration is live. And yes, every day the situation is different. According to the statistics, only a third of people who left in 2022 are now staying abroad, and two-thirds they came back home to the territory of Ukraine. But now I'm talking about the people who have somewhere to come back home, so people who have still housing here in our country. As for the annexed territories, like the north of Kharkiv region, Sumska, Chernihiv region, where the villages were destroyed, and people just have nowhere to come back. That's why they stay abroad. And it is very difficult to establish the fact that were Odesa residents living Ukraine. So we know about the general number of Ukrainians living abroad, but not about some specific regions, because there is no mentioning of the oblast in their IDs, in their foreign passports. Now I would like to give floor to our colleagues. If there are no more questions from our colleagues, I have one. We've asked about the support in Moldova, but we have not asked about the support provided in Romania, because Romania is a member in the EU member state. Hanna, perhaps you can share some details. As for support in Romania, they support us a lot, and the people, the Romanians, support us. They are very open, they are very sincere, they are very kind. And I have not seen any other European country where people were so ready to help us. In Romania, there is the EU program of financial support for people to find comfortable accommodation. Romanians ensure very comfortable conditions for us. As for the financial support and the volunteer support, as for volunteer support, these are Ukrainians who mainly organize it. And we also try to support the people affected by the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. There is also the support from the International Committee of Red Cross, and the support provided by the UN. For 3 months, you can receive 110 euros. For the families who have small children, they can receive vouchers, they can receive donor support and the support from Romania, but in the form of vouchers that allow you to buy products in the nearest supermarket for the stated amount. This is all I can say about Romania's support. So there is no second-hand clothes, for example, provided to people, but we organize such support ourselves here. But generally, Romanians support us a lot, and we love the country. I have a question to Ms. Pogrebnyak. Are there still simplified procedures for Ukrainians to get documents staying abroad, like new passports, documents for their children? And I have one more question about possible record of males staying abroad now, in terms of the possible service in the Ukrainian army. First, I would like to say that Ukrainians who are now abroad and who left the country basing on the birth certificate of children, and now the countries where they're staying require to provide passports instead of birth certificates. for their children. What can Ukrainians do in such situations? Our consulates and embassies are open in all European countries, but there is a limited capacity of these institutions when it comes to equipment and human resources. So the special windows, so-called windows, have been opened, for example, in Poland, in Warsaw, Gdańsk, Wrocław, and Krakow, for Ukrainians to get new documents and also, for example, to update their driving licenses or, for example, to update or get a new national passport or to update or receive and new foreign passports. We're planning to open and to provide such services in different countries like Turkey, Spain, Germany, etc. So the countries where we can see the biggest number of Ukrainians residing. And we can also speak about Ukrainians who come back to Ukraine to update their documents to return back abroad. So we have a constantly migrating Ukrainians who are not ready to break their connections here in Ukraine because families are staying here. As for military record, this is not directly our responsibility, but according to our legislation, the men who left Ukraine are also obliged to serve in the Ukrainian army, similarly to their obligations here in Ukraine. There is a different category of Ukrainians who have undergone an official procedure with our migration service. There are some men who are staying abroad, who hide there, who are afraid to get new passports with our service, with our institutions. But we should remind that even those citizens who have an official right to leave Ukraine they are still obliged to report about themselves in terms of military service. So can they get new documents? No. Of course, they can get new documents because we cannot refuse a person with issuing a new passport if this person tries to avoid a military record. I know about such cases abroad, about the procedure. So I would like to say that the migration service does not provide notices to men. We are not obliged to do this. We can just issue documents and provide services within our mandate. We do not check military records. We do not check the military card. And if people are staying abroad, they can address any our institution regardless of the place of their registration. I would like to thank all participants of our today's press conference. So we are going to stop here. And if any journalists are interested in our today's guests, we will be more than happy to provide contacts of them to organize interview online or offline. I would like to thank all our guests today. Thank you for finding time to join our today's briefing offline and online, and see you later. Stay tuned.